Welcome to the OK Let's Learn podcast. This is two podcasts in one. One where we dive into tons of great stories and books, and another where we just dive into tons of interesting topics. My name is Kevin O'Keefe. So today, let's learn all about our human body's digestive system. The digestive system, yes, in a deep dive, I told you about this. Go back and listen to the 11 Body Systems, a previous episode, and you will get an overview of how our body is organized, how it works, what goes into each different system. But we got to dive into some of these specific systems, and we all know the digestive system. So let's start this journey. And yes, it's a twisty, turny journey through really an amazing system. And we can all reference it. We can all relate to it. And hey, so much a part of this journey we know, but do we know? So the bottom line is when we take a bite of food, you're basically opening up the front door to this, like I said, long and winding road. There's that beetle metaphor again. It's this big processing factory. But before anything goes further, the first step after it gets into our mouth, what do? We end up chewing with our teeth. Babies are not born with visible teeth. Their first teeth, which of course we call baby teeth, starts to appear around 6 months old. By about age 6 or 7, these baby teeth begin to fall out, making way for adult teeth. Most people end up having 32 adult teeth. And not all of our teeth in our mouth are the same. Incisors, the ones that are flat and in front, they slice our food. Then right behind them are canines. Yes, like the dog. They're the pointy teeth, the sharp teeth on either side. They tear up the food. Behind them are bicuspids, and behind them are molars. And what do? They grind our food into the tiny pieces. As we chew, something else is going on. Our mouth is making saliva. Saliva just isn't water. It contains special chemicals called enzymes. Enzymes are like little tiny helpers that break the food down into simpler parts. One enzyme in saliva begins breaking down starches, like the bread or pasta that we eat, right there, right at the beginning, right in our mouth. Then, of course, we have our tongue. It's right there, right? It's also hard at work. The tongue moves the food around. It mixes in with the saliva, and it shapes the food into like soft balls, and we call them bolus. Then it pushes that bolus towards the back of our throat. Now, right there, all the way at the end of our throat, if you open up your mouth, look in the mirror, you may have noticed something, this like little dangling structure. That's called the uvula, and it helps close off our nasal passages so when we swallow, the food doesn't go back up into our nose. Of course, we don't want that. Now, it enters the food, enters this long muscular tube that we all know, and it's called the esophagus. This tube just doesn't let the food fall down. It squeezes the food in waves like a slow-moving hug, and it just kind of pushes the food along. This movement is called peristalsis. And at the bottom of this esophagus is a special ring of muscles, and it's called a sphincter. Think of it like a gatekeeper. It opens to let food into the stomach and then closes it to keep the stomach contents from coming back up into the esophagus. So now we're in the stomach. This stomach that we all know is like a churning, acidic mixing chamber. It's got the shape of the letter J, and inside, powerful muscles squeeze and mash the food, while strong acids and enzymes break it down even further. This acid is so strong it could damage most materials, but your stomach is lined with a protective layer of mucus to keep it safe. Food doesn't stay here long. I think most of us know this, but maybe we don't. It only stays here for a few hours. Before then, it turns into a liquid, a thick liquid, called chyme. Did you know this? A word that's not used out there. It's actually spelled chyme, C-H-Y-M-E. So this is what our food turns into. Chyme. Bet you didn't know that. All right. So now things are getting even more interesting. The chyme enters the small intestine, which is actually the longest part of our digestive system. It's 20 feet long. Well, if it's 20 feet long, why do they call it small? Because it's small as in narrower, not shorter than the large intestine. So when you're talking small, large, it's about how narrow it is. The width of the individual tubes, small versus large. So inside the small intestine is where most of the real magic of the digestive system happens. This is really important to grab onto and understand. It's the nutrient absorption. The walls of the small intestine are covered in millions of tiny finger-like structures called villi. Each villus is covered with even tinier bumps. Together, they create a huge surface area, kind of like a shaggy carpet. That's a great metaphor to think about. But here's why it matters. Nutrients from the food, like sugars, amino acids, vitamins, minerals, they pass through the walls of the villi and into tiny blood vessels. From there, your bloodstream carries those nutrients all over our body, delivering energy and building materials, the essentials. We talk about nutrients. This is how they get to our cells throughout our body. So let's dive into this a little bit more, because you may be thinking, wait a minute. You've got these villi that are inside the small intestine, but yet then they go through them and they go into the rest of the body. No. Explain this, right? So you may be thinking, right, because the small intestine is like a tube, right? And the blood vessels are like little tubes. Well, how do they get from one tube to the other? It sounds strange, but yeah, our digestive tract is like a tunnel that's running through us. To actually enter our body and go throughout our body into our circulatory system, nutrients have to cross a barrier, right? So how does this work? The barrier is the wall of the small intestine, and this is where the villi actually come in. It's not like they're actually inside and then there's this coating of the small intestine. Each villus is like a tiny finger sticking out into the intestine. But here's the key. The surface of each villus is made of a super thin layer of cells, just one cell thick, really thin. Inside each villus are tiny blood capillaries. Capillaries are very small blood vessels, and a special vessel called a lacteal. These are for fats. Now hold on. Here we go. You got to picture this. The food nutrients are on one side inside the small intestine. Then there's that single thin cell layer that's in the middle. And right on the other side are tiny blood vessels waiting. So how do they cross the barrier? Well, believe it or not, it's 3 different ways. And one is diffusion. Some nutrients naturally move from where there is a lot of them inside the intestine to where there are less of them inside the blood. It's like a crowd spreading out into an empty space. Then there's what they call active transport. Some nutrients need help. The cells use energy Do you believe this? Some cells use energy to pull these nutrients through, almost like opening a door and carrying them across. And finally, the other way that they move, there's special handling for fats, and this deserves their own independent episode. Fats are so interesting. They're definitely different. They entered the villi and they go into these lacteals, like I talked about, which is actually part of the lymphatic system that we learned about in our previous episode. So they enter the villi and go into these lacteals, and then they eventually drain into the bloodstream. That filtering system, that waste kind of like in basically purifying them. There's so much going on here, and you wonder why doctors need all this special training, because just these little tiny parts of these systems, in this case the digestive system, I mean, it's amazing. The connecting tissue that I mentioned, it's not a big open pipe or a hole, right? So again, just to bring home this point, it's a single layer of specialized cells, and they're supported by a thin layer of connective tissue inside the villus with capillaries pressed up right against those cells. So you got to think of the way the nutrients go into our bloodstream. It's like a sponge. The sponge is the villi that's dipped into kind of like nutrient-rich soup. Inside the sponge are tiny straws that are the capillaries, and the sponge wall is so thin that the soup seeps through and gets pulled into the straws. So basically, it's less like pouring something through a pipe and more of this metaphor about thousands of little tiny doorways in this pipe, each one that's carefully letting the right things pass through it right into our bloodstream. Now, our small intestine, it doesn't work alone. It's got a bunch of organs that help the process. The first is the liver. It produces bile, which helps break down our fats. Then there's the gallbladder. It stores and releases that bile when it's needed. And the pancreas, yes, it makes digestive enzymes that break down these fats, break down proteins, break down carbohydrates. The pancreas is especially interesting because it also plays a role in diabetes. It produces insulin, which is a hormone that helps control the sugar levels in our blood. While insulin isn't directly digesting food, it certainly helps our body use the nutrients absorbed from digestion, especially sugar. Again, so many of these different organs can be their own episodes, but just know that these organs help the process of digesting food. So tucked near the beginning of the large intestine is a small pouch called the appendix. We want to reference them. Everyone's heard of the appendix. Believe it or not, for a long time, people thought it had no purpose. And people that all of a sudden have sharp pains in their lower abdomen, it's like, whoa, what's going on? Yeah, it could be appendicitis. Your appendix could be ruptured, and people have to have surgery for this. But believe it or not, now scientists believe that the appendix may help store helpful bacteria for our gut. So after the small intestine has absorbed all the nutrients, what's left is, yes, the large intestine, or otherwise known as the colon. This passageway in our digestive system is shorter. It's only about 5 feet, but it's wider. Again, that's why they call it the large intestine. Its main job is to absorb water and turn leftover waste into solid material. Helpful bacteria live here too, and it breaks down some of the remaining material and even produces certain vitamins. Finally, the waste reaches the end of the line, which is the rectum, and it exits the body through the anus, which is controlled by another sphincter muscle. We know what the feces are. We don't need to go into details, but just understand that this is the end of the digestive process. Now, Let's zoom out for a moment and clear up something important. The digestive system is responsible for breaking down food, absorbing nutrients, and removing solid waste. When we talk about removing solid waste, you may be thinking, wow, what was that other system Mr. O'Keefe talked about, the excretory system? The excretory system removes waste product from our body, but in different ways, mainly through urine using organs like the kidneys. While the large intestine removes solid waste, it is generally considered part of the digestive system, not the excretory system. So that is interesting. It gets a little confusing, but just know down towards the end, right, the large intestine, not the excretory system. In fact, the digestive system. So, few final fascinating ideas to leave you with. Our entire digestive system from mouth to end is about 25 to 30 feet long, longer than a school bus. Our stomach acid is strong enough to dissolve metal under the right conditions. And our small intestine's villi that we've talked about, it creates so much surface area that if you stretched it out flat, it would cover an entire tennis court. Every time we eat, this incredible system springs into action quietly, efficiently, and magically. So, the next time you take a bite of food, just remember, you're not just eating, you're beginning an amazing journey. The digestive system. Friends, I hope you enjoyed this journey. Literally and figuratively, reach out to me at kevmok21@gmail.com. We have a Facebook group, OK Let's Learn. We are on YouTube. Follow, hit that bell. You'll get notifications for future episodes. If you enjoy listening to the podcast, especially Apple Podcasts, top right-hand corner, there's a plus button. Hit that. That will subscribe you to the podcast so you'll get all new episodes on your phone when they're released. We're getting them out every day, every 2 days. So until next time, have fun and keep learning.